Welcome to a rainy Friday, September the 25th. At least the seasons seem to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. Autumn has begun. The rain is coming. And it's welcome. I just checked the forecast too, and it looks like we'll get a good rain today. And although things could change, the forecast for our gathering tomorrow, the annual Woodchuckers Ball, looks very good. So, and Venerable Rakito's been working away, and Ajahn Kuradamo's been chipping in, so things are well staged. So it should be more fun and less work, I think. So I'm looking forward to that. We've had no gatherings of that sort all year, so it'll be nice before things get too wet and too cold to be able to host a few more people. So, and even though it's Friday, I'm still only about 2/3 of the way through one of the busiest weeks I've had in ages. So, yesterday I spent nearly 5 hours on Zoom talking with nearly 60 of the finest people in the world. The online gathering that we had of all the various senior monastics from all of the international branch monasteries around the world went really well yesterday. We were thinking we should probably not wait another 3 years or something and do something like that every year. Many people commented just how nice it was to see each other's face and hear each other's voice. We also did have some small groups and some opportunity to kind of talk about themes of the holy life and the various challenges of running monasteries and practicing in this day and age. And it was wonderful. Quite a blessing when everything works too. Several of the senior monastics live in pretty remote situations with not a lot of modern infrastructure communication. So several of them were calling in on satellites from the middle of very undeveloped forested areas. And a couple, notably my friend Ajahn Siripanyo and Ajahn Sukito, who live in little hermitages connected to Wat Bananachat, one on the Thai-Lao border, just above the Mekong, and the other one on the Burmese border in the far western part of Sayok Yai National Park. And I think both of them were on iPads that were able to connect to the cell phone network if you climb up a mountain in Ajahn Siripanyo's case. So there was a little clearing that they have for a fire break up behind where their hermitage is, and if he hiked up there, he could get a decent enough signal. And for our gathering yesterday, it was 3 a.m. when he called in. So he had a little LED lantern just barely lighting his face, and over the course of our conversations, the sun was rising over this beautiful stretch of tropical forest. And you could hear all the cicadas and animals of the forest waking up and sending forth their sounds. And it worked well enough to keep us connected and to share some thoughts. What is particularly difficult for practice in these times? Well, there's always our own defilements, obstructing and hindering. Most of the monastics are dwelling quite at ease, though. I mean, we've been practicing renunciation and solitude and simplicity. So, even in places where there's been a pretty profound lockdown, it's just simplified things on some level for many of the monasteries. And some of them are quite happy for it, I guess you could say. Just more quietude, more simplicity. Um, I'd say one of the more difficult things, though, is just the interruption to the daily contact that most of our monastic communities have and the relationships that they have with the larger community. The largest of them being Amravati Monastery, which is just outside of London and has a lay community of hundreds. And people do not have much access to visiting the monastery because of the condition of the pandemic in England right now. So, and most poignantly, there was a few monastics talking about friends of the monastery that have passed away for one reason or another. And one of the roles that the monastics play is in doing funeral rites and funeral chanting. And in Thailand, many of the monasteries actually have a crematorium built right into the monastery, and that's where funerals happen. And quite strict restrictions in England. So having to have funerals stretch out over many days so that people can gather together. So that's quite difficult. It's kind of a time when we really need each other, and it's very meaningful to be able to gather with your spiritual community to process the death of a loved one. But on the whole, everyone seems to be faring very well. And and how do monks survive in the middle of nowhere? Well, they don't live in the middle of nowhere. Um, so one of the monasteries is not all that far, even though it's in a national park. There is a village nearby, and they walk Bindabat every day, as most monks do in Thailand. The other one is quite remote, and there is not a village nearby, so they have a small group of houses near the front part of the monastery, which is quite large patch of forest, and people drive in these enormous four-wheel drive vehicles to offer food to those who cook and store the food. So there's some lay people and a cook for the monastery that lives there. But in some sense, it's still not all that different than maybe some of the other bigger monasteries, even the one near London. Such a large monastery that people are often bringing food. And there's a whole kitchen scene there with cooks, people that live in the community that are cooks. So this morning I'm feeling gratitude for that, just that everything worked and the ability to sort of connect with my far-flung family of fellow samanas, and grateful for the rain and grateful for this breath. Nothing much coming up for a reflection this morning, and we had lots of questions yesterday. So if people want to pop some questions in the chat, I'll take some questions. How many different monasteries have I lived in? I cannot remember. Certainly more than a dozen or a couple dozen for various periods of time, but I've spent most of my life in 3 monasteries. Any ones that I like more than others? Well, a monastery is a conditioned thing, or a sankhara, like anything. So they change. Monks and nuns come and go, abbots come and go, buildings come and go, good conditions come and go. And one of the things that was interesting living in Thailand, where there are so many monasteries and so many teachers, is interesting to a frequent theme of conversation amongst the newly ordained monks is after they get their foundational training in where is it they would most like to live and with which teacher and which place. And there's this dream of the perfect monastery. And it's interesting to see how monasteries, like everything else, they go through good and bad conditions. Sometimes a teacher is really on fire and teaching, and he has the health and the experience and the ability to teach and articulate his experience and knowledge of Dhamma. And then that passes for some reason, sometimes due to ill health. Sometimes the focus of his work and his monastery shifts as it grows, and maybe he gets more fame or gets to be more well known, and there's more visitors or more building projects as the monasteries build and expand, or more publishing projects. So the ones that I like the most are the ones that are inhabited by people that are sincerely trying to practice, put in the Buddhist teaching into practice and living with a measure of harmony, and where it's easy enough to get the 4 requisites in the right amount. How do you maintain focus on the breath when thoughts start to push you around? I've been getting nice and calm, but with more calm, the thoughts, more like images actually, seem to have more pull to them. Well, Zuri, if you're focusing on the breath, try to keep nudging the mind towards engaging with the fascination and the interest and the pleasure and joy that comes from attending more holistically to the breath. There should be this ever-increasing interest and joy that comes from wholeheartedly being there for the experience of the breath. And that robs the energy that might kind of be going into thoughts and whatnot. So on some level, you see the breath and even better attention on the breath as the best strategy for happiness, and thoughts as something that are only going to take you away from that. If images are a distraction, it sometimes can be helpful just to go back to opening the eyes in a very unfocused way, and that breaks some of the internal visions and sight phenomena that's coming in, because we have an external sense base for vision and an internal one. So, with the eyes closed and there's various visual impressions kind of coming up, sometimes you can just break that by opening the eyes and just softly focusing them, not really looking at anything in front of you, but just open the eyes and continuing to deepen attention on the breath. So sometimes that can help. But keep intensifying the interest and the joy in the object of the meditation. A personal question. Do you think that becoming a monk has reduced or even eradicated your ability to fall in love? If yes, in what way? Well, I guess it depends what we mean by fall in love, but I'm going to guess that you're talking about fall in love with another person. And I think eradicated is a pretty certain word that I would shy away from. It's probably greatly reduced the chance that I could fall in love in some ways. I think most importantly, in support of my life as a monk, I don't see relationship as my path. I don't think I will find completion or contentment in that. So, and I've devoted my life to a different path. Not that they need to be in conflict with one another, but they do if you're going to be a Buddhist monastic. In sitting meditation, I find myself enjoying watching and playing with the breath energy through the whole body. What's the difference with this and single-pointed attention? Yeah, this is a good question. I mean, you get varying takes on what strategy people think is most effective. And, I think if one has a fairly clear sense of what qualities of mind it is that we're trying to develop in our meditation, it's not all that important. What's important is having a clear strategy and knowing what qualities of mind we're trying to overcome. So, namely the 5 hindrances, and what qualities we're trying to cultivate. And speaking of formal meditation, what the qualities we're trying to sort of cultivate are the jhana factors of applied and sustained thought, piti and sukha, joy and happiness, and ekaggata, wholeness of mind. So enjoying watching and playing with the breath energy through the whole body, if that's working and helping you overcome the five hindrances and develop those jhana factors, then that's all you need. That's great. Um, some teachers urge a technique where you're picking a single point and sticking there. But and I've experimented with both means, and I don't have a fixed way that I do breath meditation. I don't have a discrete technique that I'm always doing. So, I've done both, and my experience of it is both can take you to the same place if you're clear of what it is that you're trying to affect in the mind. And there's a way where in focusing on that single point, as the hindrances are abandoned and the mind kind of comes together, uh, the breath energy seems to just automatically pervade. And some of this is because your attention is like absorbing into the experience of the breath, and the mind is becoming more refined. And the strategy is not moving the mind at all, and the breath energy and the awareness seems to like permeate the body, and then even go beyond any sense that there is a body. But also you can play with suffusing the body with the breath energy that gets you to very similar, if not the same place. Although meditation never feels the same for me. Every meditation is a unique experience. Good meditation has certain hallmarks and certain characteristics, but the experience itself is always unique, a unique and interesting and joyful experience when things come together. It's challenging letting go of so many societal norms and liberties that are being destroyed before our eyes. Occasionally, some primal anxiety, fear arises. Any suggestions? Well, in a very direct way, bringing that to resolution, and and keeping a steady devotion to cultivating the Brahma Viharas, I think, helps strengthen one um, in a challenging time. And making that personal commitment to sort of work on the root cause of these things, which is our endeavor to understand and overcome all forms of greed, hatred, and delusion. Perhaps the effort in doing that isn't recognized as effective by everybody, but it is the very thing praised by the Buddha and the wise. Instead of hacking at the branches, striking at the root. And we have to remind ourselves again and again, the world is not the refuge. And that's not to live with callousness or apathy or on some level, I mean, the anxiety and the fear is connected with the desire for the world to be other than it is. And on some level, the desire to be at ease in the world. Is it useful or wise putting oneself in difficult situations to train the mind in equanimity? It can be, but I think life brings enough difficult situations and challenges with it that we don't need to go searching for them. Maybe more importantly is not to run away from them. But yeah, I don't encourage punishing yourself or putting yourself in danger or harm's way, or not putting too much stock in testing yourself. I think your time is better spent just training yourself and developing and strengthening everything it is that the Buddha encourages us to develop and strengthen. And the more profound forms of equanimity take a great level of cultivation. Do you ever become familiar enough with the landscape of your mind that you don't find yourself wondering, how'd I get to this place? And thus you know how to find your way to a particular place. Not sure how to interpret it. Not sure how to interpret that. Like good places or bad places? Mike, well, we do want to understand how it is that things arise. And, with good things, how it is that we can nurture and sustain them. The more important thing is just developing the path and developing the causes and conditions so that we can respond to what it is that life throws at us, and that we have access to positive and wholesome states of mind, increasing access to them, and increasingly the strength to nurture and sustain them. And it becomes like a muscle or a habit or an aptitude. So like when you're really strong in being able to generate the the wish for well-being, metta, it's just an aptitude or a habit of the heart. It's just you can just go there increasingly. Like the Buddha talks about sort of mastery over the mind in having practiced and developed these kind of qualities that we're seeking. Just like somebody who would have the intention to extend their arm or retract their arm. So it's just that automatic, something you do. So like when I need to reach out and grab my cup or something, it just happens. at least for now. I mean, it's possible I could develop some uh, degenerative neural disease, and the impetus would come and the arm wouldn't move. But similarly, we want to get to a place in our mind where that just kind of happens. And, people that are really masterful meditators, they can just sit and very quickly enter and abide in various states of mind. So I don't know if that addresses your question, but okay, friends, I'm going to end it there. I see a lot of extra questions in conversation that I'm not going to be able to tend to today. So be well and have a good weekend. I'll be back next Monday for our morning coffee time. And for those of you who are planning to come out and visit us this weekend, I'm looking forward to it very much. And as I said earlier, it should be more fun than work. So, and currently the forecast looks good. So I look forward to seeing you all. Be well, friends.